Senate will come to order. Mr. Carpenter, please call the roll.
Senators Aguilar, Baumgartner, Cook, Coram, Court,
Excused.
Crowder, Donovan, Finberg, Fields, Garcia, Gardner, Guzman, Hill, Holbert, John, Jones, Kagan,
Excused.
Kafalis, Kerr, Lambert, Lundberg, Marble, Martinez Humenic,
Excused.
Merrifield, Moreno, Neville, Priola, Scott, Smallwood, Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Tate, Tate,
Excused.
Todd, Todd,
Absent.
Williams, Zenzinger, Mr. President,
Here. 28 present, 1 absent, 6 excused. We have a quorum. Senator Priola, please come and lead us in the pledge.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, please join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag, to the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the journal. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I move the reading of the Journal of Tuesday, February the 20th, 2018 be dispensed with, and that the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You've heard the motion. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion is adopted. Committee reports.
February 20th, 2018, Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 146 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations.
Senate Services.
Correctly engrossed, Senate Bill 128, 144, and 149.
Please add Senator Smallwood. Please add Senator Todd to the roll. Third reading of bills consent calendar. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title to the bill on the third reading of bills consent calendar.
Senate Bill 149 by Senator Gardner and Representatives Gray and Harrod concerning records of the Board of Directors of the Denver Health and Hospital Authority.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 149 on third reading consent calendar, final passage.
Is there any discussion on all of the bill on the third reading of bills consent calendar? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the bill on the third reading of bills consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With 30 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 5 excused, the motion is adopted. Are there any co-sponsors on Senate Bill 149? Senator Crowder. Senator Lambert. Senator John. Senator Moreno. Senator Aguilar. Please add Senator Tate to the roll.
So would you chair second reading consent? So let's go ahead and do second reading consent. I'll move to proceed out of order and do that.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order to take up general order second reading of bills consent calendar.
Motion is to proceed out of order to take up general order second reading of bills consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and we will proceed out of order. General order second reading of bills consent calendar. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general order second reading of bills consent calendar.
Motion before the body is for the Senate to resolve itself from the Committee of the Whole for consideration of general order second reading of bills consent calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The aye has it, and we will proceed out of order we've already done that. We will resolve ourselves in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the general orders second reading of bills consent calendar. Senator Cook will take the chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee will come to order. The coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Carpenter, please read all the titles to the bills on general orders second reading of bills consent calendar.
Senate Bill 141 by Senator Court and Representative Wilson concerning voluntary contribution designations on the Colorado Individual Income Tax Return Form. House Bill 1144 by Representative Thurlow and Senator Tate concerning certain publishing requirements for the Department of Revenue's disclosure of average taxes paid table. Senate Bill 161 by Senator Smallwood and Representatives Kraftharp and Landgraf concerning repeal of the Behavioral Health Transformation Council.
Senate Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move all of the bills on the general order second reading of bills consent calendar, including Senate Bill 141, along with the Finance Committee report, House Bill 1144, and Senate Bill 161.
Is there any discussion on any of the committee reports? Senator Lambert.
Thank you. I'd like to be recorded as a no vote on 141.
Okay, any other discussion on any of the committee reports on second reading of bills consent calendar? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of the committee reports on second reading bills consent calendar. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and the committee reports are adopted. Is there any discussion on any of the bills on second reading of bills consent calendar? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of all the bills on general order second reading of bills consent calendar, which consists of Senate Bill 141, 1144, and Senate Bill 161. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? No. The aye has it, and the bills on second reading of bills consent calendars are adopted. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion for the body is to rise and report from second reading of bills consent calendar. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it on both. We will rise and report.
The Senate will come back to order. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee has met and had a number of bills under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee will hold the reports out in consideration of the following task bills being the second reading thereof makes following recommendations are on Senate Bill 141 as amended, Senate Bill 161 passed on second reading in order engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1144 passed on second reading in order revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. What was that again? Please add Senator Martinez-Humenick to the roll. Senator Cook.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report from second reading of bills consent calendar, which consisted of 141, 1144, and 161.
The motion before the body is the adoption of the report to the committee of the whole. Are there any no votes on the motion? With 32 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 3 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 141 is amended. Senate Bill 161 passed on second reading, ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1144 passed on second reading, ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Please add Senator Hill to the roll. Third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 128?
Senate Bill 128 by Senator Gardner and Representative Liston, concerning a restriction on a state agency's authority to increase a fee.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move Senate Bill 128 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 128? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 128. Are there any no votes? Senator Moreno, Senator Zenzinger, Senator Kafalas, Senator John, Senator Merrifield. No votes on Senate Bill 128. Senator Fenberg. With 27 ayes, 6 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, please add Senator Donovan as a no vote on Senate Bill 128. No votes. With 26 ayes, 7 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Senate Bill 128 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Senator Crowder, Senator Priola, Senator Smallwood, Senator Tate, Senator Lundberg, Senator Lambert, Senator Marble, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Hill, Senator Cook, Senator Scott, Senator Neville. Please add the President. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 144.
Senate Bill 144 by Senator Kerr and Representative Willett, concerning the regulation of bicycles approaching intersections.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 144 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 144? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 144. Are there any no votes? Senator John, Senator Cook, Senator Marble, Senator Neville, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Lundberg, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Gardner, Senator Scott, Senator Tate, Senator Lambert, Majority Leader Holbert, Senator Smallwood, please add the President. With 18 ayes, 15 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Senate Bill 144 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Merrifield, Senator Aguilar, Senator Fenberg, Senator Kafalas, Senator Hill, Senator Guzman, Senator Williams, committee reports.
February 20th, 2018, Committee on Local Government. After consideration of the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1041 be referred to Committee of the Whole. A fair recommendation be placed on the consent calendar.
General orders, second reading of bills. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of general orders, second reading of bills.
Motion for the body is for the Senate to resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the general orders, second reading of bills calendar. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of the general orders, second reading of bills calendar. Senator Hill will take the chair.
The committee will come to order and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title of Senate Bill 83?
40?
My apologies. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 43?
Senate Bill 43 by Senator Grantham and Representative Lundin concerning the legal effects that the rejection by the Senate of an individual nominated by the governor for appointment to a state office have on the subsequent nomination or temporary appointment of the same individual to or holder of the individual in the same office.
Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to lay over Senate Bill 43 to the end of the second reading calendar.
Colleagues, the motion is to lay over Senate Bill 43 until the end of General Order second reading calendar. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 43 will be laid over until the end of second reading calendar. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 22?
Senate Bill 22 by Senators Tate and Aguilar and Representatives Pedersen and Kennedy concerning clinical practice measures for safer opioid prescribing.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 22 in the committee report.
To the committee report.
Oh.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, the committee was a strike below amendment. We worked for several weeks with all the stakeholders to try to come to agreement with the exact language, and so we'd ask for your support of the amendment.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report?
This is the one where you put in that language.
Colleagues, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Health and Human Services Committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a bill out of the Interim Committee on Opiate Prescribing, and it will limit the number of narcotics that a prescriber can give to a patient the first time they prescribe for them within the last 12 months. The reason this is important is we have learned that many people become addicted to opiates after being given them for pain or after sharing them with a friend for pain. And so our goal with this would be to decrease the presence of opiates in the community, and we'd ask for your support.
All right, colleagues, there's an amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read Amendment 7?
Amendment L007 to Senate Bill 22 by Senator Priola. Amend the Senate Health and Human Services report dated February 8, 2018, page 1, strike
Senator
lines.
Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L007.
To the amendment, please.
Members, this amendment simply removes superfluous language of may when it concerning e-prescribe that isn't needed. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 7? Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we'd ask for a no vote on this amendment. This is a separate issue about whether e-prescribing will be mandated or not. And a lot of the language in this bill, as you can tell by the fact that it was a strike below, was carefully negotiated, and there is not agreement on this portion yet.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 7? Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I understand the intentions of my colleague from Adams County. This is part of a carefully discussed set of provisions in the bill with all our medical practitioners. It is true that you could call this superfluous, the permissive language around the activity of electronic prescribing. However, many of the stakeholders felt that having this in the bill sent the right message about how prescriptions should be handled going forward. Perhaps you can look at it as a legislative signal. And I just urge a no vote on the amendment at this time. Thank you.
Colleagues, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment 7. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. Amendment 7 is lost. To the bill. See no further discussion? Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of concerns with the 7-day limit in there. For those of us in rural Colorado that may live 45 minutes or an hour from a pharmacy, becomes a challenge, quite frankly. I understand the issue you're trying to address, and from a metro perspective, that makes sense. But for a person that lives in Kit Carson, Colorado, when they have to drive to Burlington or Hugo to pick up their meds, their pain meds, and you limit them to 7 days, now all of a sudden they make that 2 trips, a 45-mile trip, which for many people isn't a big deal. But when you're sick out in the middle of the country, it becomes an issue. Just want you to think about how this impacts everybody in the state as opposed to just those in the urban areas that we're trying to address the problem. I am going to be a no on the bill. Thank you.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad to hear those comments. I think it's important to note that in terms of this bill and what it's doing in terms of creating prescription guardrails, it's really about post-acute pain issues, not chronic pain issues. And the prescription limits, I would call them guardrails, because there's opportunities to go beyond the 7 days at the initial time that the prescription happens. It has been carefully tailored to handle needs for pain medication that are not part of the exceptions. And the exceptions in the bill are those chronic pain situations where a patient will need medication more than a 7 or 14-day interval after some type of acute pain incident. So again, I recognize the comments from my colleague. We've been sensitive to those. Urge an aye vote on the bill. Thank you.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I add one other provision, which is that the provider may give a second fill if they feel it's appropriate. And again, this is only for acute pain, so you've never had narcotics. You twist your ankle really badly and the doctor chooses to give you narcotics. That's the only prescription we're talking about, and there are exceptions for cancer and chronic pain.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also served on the opioid interim committee, interim study committee. I think this is one of the actions that this body can take. Actually, HCPF has already taken some of these actions by rule to direct pharmacies to limit the duration of opioid prescriptions. I think this is part of a national trend. But in Colorado, we need to recognize that long duration use of certain kinds of opioids lead to incredible addictions. This has been taken advantage of, I believe, by pharmacies, by doctors. We heard a lot of testimony about maybe even pointing fingers, pointing blame. But we have a national problem. There is a lot of blame to go around. And we need to put some restrictions, common sense restrictions, on the amount of opioids that are distributed. And we hear especially that when opioids are overprescribed in some cases over periods of time, they usually end up in somebody's medicine cabinet. They get off of it. And this is also a major source of death from suicide or from overdose. So how we handle this makes sense, that we need to watch the number of pills that are going out. I know just from some of my family members who have in the past gotten several weeks' supply of very, very powerful, in some cases toxic opioids that are not going to be that effective in pain management after a week or two. They get addicted to those, and it takes a tremendous amount of time to overcome those addictions. This is a life and death issue. I thank you for the sponsors for bringing this forward. We've had a lot of discussion about this throughout our deliberations over the summer. It also pointed out there are a number of alternatives after a couple of weeks or after even 1 week of opioids. There are a lot of other alternatives to pain management that should be considered under a doctor's care. After about a week, they become more important in managing pain than opioids because the effects start wearing off and the addictions start going up. So thank you to the sponsors. I'd encourage an aye vote on Senate Bill 22.
Colleagues, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 22. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 22 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title of Senate Bill 7?
Senate Bill 7 by Senators Tate and Guzman and Representatives Duran and Becker J. concerning the Colorado Affordable Housing Tax Credit in connection therewith, renaming the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit the Colorado Affordable Housing Tax Credit, and extending the period during which the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority may allocate affordable housing tax credits.
Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 7.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 7?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. This bill is an extension of something we're doing already, and it's an extension of an activity that's run by CHAFA related to providing economic incentives via tax credits that are then semi-liquid to facilitate the development of affordable housing, multifamily units scattered throughout the metropolitan area. Urge an aye vote. And I know my colleague has some beneficial comments as well.
Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we urge the support of this bill, Senate Bill 7. This bill extends the existing low-income housing tax credit through 2024 and renames the program Colorado Affordable Housing Tax Credit. There is great need throughout the state of Colorado, rural and urban, suburban, rural, and mountain areas. Each of our counties faces unique challenges when it comes to housing, whether it's the pressure of rapid growth and development along the Front Range, or the cost of living, whatever it be. This extension will help us across the state provide better opportunities for housing for all people across the state. It builds upon, as my colleague said, builds upon the numerous varied local efforts that are already underway. So we urge this, the support of this Colorado Affordable Housing Tax Credit, as it will serve to support local plans and strategies to address these concerns across the state. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 7? Seeing none, colleagues, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 7. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 7 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to House Bill 1171?
House Bill 1171 by Representative Hamner and Senator Lundberg concerning adjustments in the amount of total program funding for public schools for the 2018 budget year and in connection therewith making and reducing an appropriation.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1171 and the Senate Appropriations Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee report actually pulled the bill back to its original form as essentially is introduced. There was one amendment that was more technical in nature that the House put in place, but the bigger issue is whether this is a supplemental bill, and it's concerning the Education Department, and the amendment accepted in the Appropriations Committee returned the bill to establish the support for public schools as what we agreed upon with the School Finance Act last year. Asks for the favorable adoption of the committee report.
Colleagues, the motion before the body is the adoption. Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to the Appropriations Committee report. I understand that the appropriations amendment and the committee report put it back to where the bill came out of the JBC, but this is an example where we have 6 of our colleagues, all fine senators and representatives that sit in a building across the way here and make decisions on funding going into our schools, funding going into our students, and they make the decisions over there, and yet much of the time For all the other supplemental bills that we did, we pretty much just, the other 94 of us just stood back and let this go. We let those 6 people make the decisions around the funding for our schools. So in case you're wondering, this amendment in the Appropriations Committee, if you're wondering what impact that has on the school districts in your Senate district, I have the chart right here, which tells you. So it's $7 million altogether. And there's a little bit of a shell game here about where the what pot of money that's here because the local share came in higher and where that money is going. But here's the effect. Here's the overall effect. If this Appropriations Committee report stays, $7 million will not be going to the schools in your district. In my district, that's over $500,000 that the students of Jefferson County Schools will not be getting. And we can stand up here and we can talk about each individual district. I have the list right here. I have the amount of money that is impacted, that impacts each individual student if this Appropriations Committee report stays the way it is. It means less money for the students in your school district. Please vote no on the Appropriations Committee report.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to add some clarity to what the amendment that we were considering that came out of appropriations really does. It is, in fact, not a shell game at all. Let me give you a little more of the details. When we pass the School Finance Act, we establish a per-pupil funding level. We did that last session. This is the supplemental to now adjust the overall appropriation to the reality of how many students are receiving or are there for the school districts to receive their per-pupil funding. There were fewer students in the actual student count than what was estimated last year. And the difference is $7 million. So there is no shell game with this, committee report. There might be a shell game if one is to say that, therefore, less money is going to the schools. Less than what? Not less than what was appropriated last year on a per-student basis. In fact, the School Finance Act over-appropriated by $7 million. We are truing up the appropriation to what the School Finance Act required. It's a very simple and straightforward manner. Now, the $7 million, if we don't accept this committee report, means we are spending that much more on this year's School Finance Act than was actually appropriate, well, then that was actually specified on a per-student basis. The JBC did make that decision because there are a lot of needs around our state. And we are simply holding the line to what was agreed upon last year, and that amount of money, therefore, does not come out of the general fund, therefore is available for all of the other things that we're considering during this session. I ask for an aye vote for the committee report.
Colleagues, just a quick heads up, we don't do introductions on Committee of the Whole, so I just will forewarn you that when Committee of the Whole is over, we will introduce our former colleague, Senator Keith King, standing in the back. So just letting you know, we will announce that after Committee of the Whole, we will announce him being here. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, you heard the number. The number is $7 million. And my question is, why are we sacrificing our children at the tune of $7 million? This is not the time to reduce funding for our kids. Our kids' future is at stake at the tune of $7 million. Now, I represent Arapahoe County, and I do have a school, Cherry Creek School. And one of my schools is going to get a reduction of $14.63. That's in a rural district that I have. That's in Deer Trail. If you know anything about our rural schools, they're already struggling with resources. We have a shortage of teachers in the state of Colorado. Why are we sacrificing our children at the tune of $7 million? You know how much we're spending on corrections at the tune of $800 million. And they're asking for more funding because they need more beds. But yet, we can't come up with $7 million to shore up and maintain our per pupil funding? Look at the chart that was shared by my colleague in reference to your school districts that are going to be impacted by this matrix as it relates to per pupil funding. Deer Trail, $14.63. That's a lot of cash. In Aurora, the cut is going to be $8.47. Our kids can't afford any kind of reduction as relates it to education. So I would ask that you reconsider your thoughts and opinions about this $7 million cut, and let's do what we can do to fund our kids and not sacrifice our kids. It's all about our priorities. It's all about our values. We value kids. We need to make sure they have the appropriate funds to support their education.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I just want to walk everybody through some school finance numbers because there's a lot being thrown around here. Last year, we spent roughly over $5 billion on school finance from the state share. This true-up bill is a rounding error. And the reason it's being brought is because student populations decreased. And the way the formula works is student populations decreasing doesn't hit the formula in one-to-one dollars. There's actually smoothing so that the districts don't have any hardship. Voting against this bill and the committee report would set a dangerous precedent, and that most years the student population does increase, and I doubt that folks would be down here arguing against a true-up bill when the student population increases in the coming years. So, thank you.
Senator Crowder.
Are you chairman or president?
You can call me whatever you want.
Thank you, Mr.
sir.
Chair.
I'll chair for
I
now.
want to be a yes on both of these because I think we need to keep in line with what the pupil funding has been. But I think that this good senator from southwestern Colorado and I have already decided, you know, we're going to put another bill in for additional money for education. So I think that we can have the best of both worlds. I think what we can do is hold the funding level where it should be at this point in time. And I think that if we can come up with some extra cash, we will be putting that forward to even put more money into education. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to throw in a thought. I just heard somebody, one of the former senators who's supporting this amendment, say that this is just a true-up. And I want to remind the body that a true-up would be about $750 million if we actually wanted to true up the amount of funding we have shorted education over the past number of years. My Senate district includes 5 different school districts if you total up the amount of funding they will not receive now, if this amendment were to pass, we're talking $479,183, and that's not peanuts, especially considering the struggles that districts have in meeting their needs, given the fact that I said earlier that we have underfunded them for the past number of years by, right now, about $750 million. So, urge you to oppose this amendment.
Senator Sonnenberg, then Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I understand this correctly, we did the long bill last year, making an assumption that we would have X number of students, kind of like we do in business. I anticipate I will have 100 employees, and I budget my payroll for 100 employees. And then 6 months later, we do a supplemental or a true up, and I actually only had 95 employees. So do I reduce my payroll budget 6 months later by those 5 employees so I actually know exactly what we're doing? I'm not paying those employees any less, and they're not getting the extra money that I had anticipated to pay the extra 5. They're still getting exactly what we told them they were going to get. The difference here is, don't we have, and I'm asking the sponsors of the bill, don't we have in our state statutes that if that pupil count goes down, none of these schools that they're talking about take an immediate hit? Isn't it over a 5-year average? So these schools truly won't get a reduction in their increase, because that's exactly what it is. They're being given the amount in a true up because they actually have less students. That makes sense to me, and hopefully the sponsors can talk about the impacts that how devastating this would be to those schools, especially rural schools, if we have a 5-year average on that pupil count. So hopefully they'll address that for me. Thank you.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, members, that analogy would hold true if we didn't have $820 million worth of back pay to those employees. The fact is if we're going to go out and tell our constituents we need to support education and pay back the $1 billion cut we gave to them over the Great Recession, and when we talk to people about 4-day school weeks, we can't afford stuff. We can't afford to have a 5-day school week. A vote yes on this Appropriation Committee report will say that you are okay with that. That's simple. Because what we're doing is we're taking money out of schools that could be there and pay down the budget stabilization factor, the negative factor. So if we're going to go out and talk to our constituents about more money for schools, you will vote no on this Appropriations Committee report.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a colleague up here from Sterling trying to use an analogy as it relates to a business. I think he used an example of if you have 100 employees, and now that you only have 95 employees, you can't finance or fund that business when you don't have the same number of employees that maybe you started the year with. Well, that analogy just doesn't work for me. Our schools are not set up as a business with employees, with benefits and stock options or 401ks. Our students are our future. And when you talk about student population, they come with uneven skill levels sometimes. Not all students come in at the same reading level. Some students might come into our school district where they have lost part of their childhood because they're refugees. You can't fund schools based on a business model based on the number of employees that you have. We have students that have special needs. We have students that live in concentrated areas of poverty. And when you have those kinds of dynamics going on, you have to have a unique funding model. And those kinds of considerations and factors should be used when we fund our schools. Just because you have a drop of enrollment, and remember how we do our per pupil count, it's based on the specific dates. We have students that come in and out of our school district. So that just doesn't mesh with me, that we should be running our schools like a business, like employees. That's not how our students come into our school system. We need to make sure that we're adequately resourcing our schools to deal with what it takes for them to be successful. Our gifted, our talented, our new Americans, whatever we have at that school, we need to make sure that we fund them. We should not be sacrificing our students. Deer Trail, their cut is $14.63 per student. They already don't have enough math teachers. They already don't have enough science teachers. And here we are, cutting our per pupil funding in 2018. This is the wrong direction for the state of Colorado. Let's fund our students and let's not sacrifice them.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be brief on this. But you know, a lot of the opposition I've heard to this reminds me of the joke on income tax forms, you know, where it says, how much did you make? Send it in. Well, in fact, let me just be clear. This is not a reduction in funding for per pupil funding at all, and that's how we construct the School Finance Act. That's how it's been in place since somewhere in the, I don't know, early 90s. That was the mechanism that was employed. We are not cutting per pupil funding 1 penny with this committee report, the amendment that was put in appropriations. Indeed, what we're doing is we're maintaining the per pupil funding for the School Finance Act. And with that, I should hope that we can move on and work with a lot of other things that we've got to deal with this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not going to be brief because what we are talking about is the funding of our schools. And absolutely, we're not talking about making any cuts to money that schools already have. But what we are talking about is Senate Bill 1171. That's House Bill 1171. And this bill, as it came over from the House, as this bill came over from the House, it has $7 million more dollars going to our schools, going to the schools in your district, than when this bill first came out of the Joint Budget Committee. And again, 6 people over in a building across the street making decisions on the funding of our schools. And so by approving this Appropriations Committee report, you are making a $7 million cut to schools that our schools would otherwise have if we just go ahead, vote no on the Appropriations Committee report. That $7 million that is sitting in this bill right now without the Appropriations Committee report. That is the cut that we are talking about. That money is in here. That money is in this bill. It is not in your schools yet. It has not been delivered to the school districts. It's not there to pay your teachers. It's not there to protect your students. Speaking of protecting students, I'll give you an example of something that's happening at the elementary school closest to my house, where all 3 of my kids have gone. I still have 1 child left in this school. And over the years, they've added some security precautions to this school.
Senator Kerr, I'll ask you to keep your comments tight to the committee report, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And my example comes right back to the $7 million that will not be available to all of our districts, and specifically to my school district and to my school, with this example that I'm giving. With the way my elementary school, where my son goes, is set up, is the office is actually in the middle of the school. And so a few years ago, they put up some cameras outside, and the doors are all locked, and you have to get buzzed to get in. And so the people in the office, but are sitting in the middle of the school, in the most protected place in the school. If you ring the buzzer to get in, and in order to go check in at the office, and I assume all of you go to schools in your district on a regular basis, you know that you need to go stop at the office, you need to sign in. In order to, once you get buzzed into our school, you have to actually walk past 4 different classrooms before you get to the office to get screened, show your identification, get your visitor's badge and all of that. You have to walk past 4 classrooms where my son could be in one of those classrooms. Now, our PTA has put forward a proposal and working with the principal of our school to move the office from the center of the school out to the edge of the school in one of our classrooms that has glass outside, so that we can make that the actual entrance. And people would then be screened right at the front when they come in the school. This is going to cost somewhere around $50,000. Not a huge amount of money. Maybe to us what we would consider budget dust. But to that school where my son goes every day, and he's sitting in that school right now, that will make him safer. That will make all 400 students in that school safer. That $50,000 to move the office from the center protected part of the school to the edge of the school, so that people actually have to get screened before they start passing classrooms full of kids. That is what this $7 million represents. It represents all of our kids and the protection that we need them to have when they go to school each and every day. Vote no on the Appropriations Committee report.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And what I want to do is kind of bring us back to where we are in Colorado. We're a unique state. We are the only state that I know of that has something called the negative factor or the BS factor. And so continuing to operate in arrears, I don't know, most businesses don't operate like that. Most budgets don't operate like that. And so when I look at this amendment that came through on 1171, and I recognize, and maybe it's because I served in the House, I have a respect and regard for all 100 legislators that are down here. We all were voted on, we all were elected. The vote came out 53-12 in the House. It was a bipartisan vote. It was a bipartisan support of the 65 members in the House to say we support a bipartisan solution and investment in public education in Colorado. It went to the House Appropriations Committee and was voted out once again in a bipartisan manner, 10-3. It wasn't until it came to the Senate Appropriations that it became partisan. It wasn't until it came out of that committee that said, no, we're not going to continue to invest that $700 million in public education in the state of Colorado. Folks, we have to be bipartisan in our solutions. We have to be looking at this as a big picture. The fact that we are $828 million in arrears for the negative factor, we have an opportunity to take this amount and bring it down to 821. It's still operating in arrears. The demands that are being put upon our schools and our teachers today are greater than they've ever been before. So when we talk about per pupil, that's one way of looking at it. But over and beyond all of the other demands, we know with the violence that has just happened in Florida, people are pointing their fingers and saying, what are the schools going to do about it? My question is, what are we in Colorado going to do about investing in our children over and beyond, buying down on the negative factor, and once again, reinvesting on our rural education? We have several things that are coming up, several bills that are coming forward for us to reinvest in our rural areas. We have several conversations going on about safety and protection of our children. This is not money that we can just say, oh, well, it doesn't fit into this little category, so let's just throw it all back in to the general fund. Let's figure out where that money actually can be our best investment. Our children are waiting. Our children are counting on us to invest in them. Our future depends on it. Our future depends on what we do and say under this golden dome. I'm no longer an active parent, but I am an active grandparent, and I also am an active supporter of each and every child in the state of Colorado. I would urge a no vote on the appropriations amendment. I thank the work of our JBC. I know I sat in on many of the meetings this summer, or this fall, and the selflessness of our JBC members is to be applauded. But this is one that I urge us to really reconsider, to come back, vote no on the appropriations amendment, go back to bipartisan solutions. The House sent them to us. Let's continue that and make sure that we are investing in quality education for the state of Colorado and each child. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I too rise to ask for a no vote on the committee report because I feel like this is possibilities disappearing when we talk about what this committee report has done for the overall funding. I have 7 counties that have multiple districts. One of them one of my schools doesn't have a gymnasium. Last time I traveled through district, one of the concerns I heard that was brand new to our schools was that the opioid crisis that's happening in rural areas.
Senator Donovan, I know we've got a lot of issues up affecting education. Can you try to keep it to $7 million in the Appropriations Committee report?
Yeah, because that's 7. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly will. But when we talk about the impacts in our classroom, I'm shocked at how many new issues we have. And each of those comes with a price tag to address it. So when we start talking about taking away either $8 per kid or perhaps $37,000 from Delta, that certainly impacts their ability to deal with the issues that enter in the classroom. That certainly never entered into the classroom when I was a student. And so when we vote no, I think we're taking away possibilities. I also think that this is an opportunity for us as a body to weigh in on budget priorities. I know that sometimes the budget feels like a document that arrives on our desks in a huge binder, and we start to weigh through it and we find small areas we can impact. But at large, we as a body don't always get to talk about the implications of decisions that are made in our overall budget. But today we do have that opportunity. We can say, no, we disagree with you. We do not want this committee report adopted because we have a value of investing more in our classrooms and in our students' education. And that's what a no vote on the report today would be. It would be us saying, no, we disagree. We think we should invest more. We think $7 million should go out to our districts on a per pupil basis to help our schools address the issues of funding that they year after year bring to us at town halls, bring to us on citizen lobby days, bring to us in emails, bring to us in phone calls, bring to us in Facebook posts. And so today we would have an opportunity to respond to that breadth and depth of input that we have heard from our constituents. I have not once gotten an email requesting me to decrease funding for schools. Not a single one. And so with that being said, I ask for us to keep possibility of funding schools, to keep the possibility of our teachers being able to address problems that they never thought would arrive on their doorstep. And I ask for a no vote on the committee report and thus support of getting $7 million more into our school system. Thank you.
Colleagues, the motion before the body is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it, and the Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we've had a very long and interesting discussion on really what the bill is, and this is what the bill is. It is maintaining the full per-pupil funding that was agreed upon in the School Finance Act, and it's simply truing that up to the number of students that are actually in the student census. I ask for the adoption of House Bill 1171.
There's an amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read Amendment 4?
Amendment L004 to House Bill.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L004.
To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me read this very short amendment to you. It says to strike the Appropriations Committee report dated February 14th, 2018. I ask for an aye vote.
Colleagues, we've had robust discussion on the Appropriations Committee report. The motion is the adoption of Amendment L004. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. Amendment 4 is lost. Seeing no further discussion on House Bill 1171, the motion is the adoption of House Bill 1171. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. House Bill 1171 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 125?
Senate Bill 125 by Senators Gardner and Kagan concerning fiduciary responsibilities of title insurance entities to protect funds held in conjunction with real estate closing settlement services.
Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 125 to Thursday, February 22nd.
Colleagues, the motion is to lay over Senate Bill 125 until Thursday, February 22nd. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We will lay over Senate Bill 125 until Thursday, February 22nd. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title of Senate Bill 3?
Senate Bill 3 by Senator Scott and Representatives Hansen and Becker J concerning the Colorado Energy Office.
Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 3 to follow Senate Bill 99 on the second reading calendar.
Colleagues, the motion is to lay over Senate Bill 3 until following Senate Bill 99 on the second reading calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We will lay over Senate Bill 3 until after Senate Bill 99. Mr. Carpenter, please read the title of Senate Bill 45.
Senate Bill 45 by Senator Lundberg and Representative Ransom concerning the repeal of the Architectural Paint Stewardship Act.
Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over Senate Bill 45 to follow Senate Bill 3 on the calendar.
Colleagues, the motion is to lay over Senate Bill 45 until after Senate Bill 3, after Senate Bill 99 on the second reading calendar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We will lay over Senate Bill 45. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 66?
Senate Bill 66 by Senators Sonnenberg and Garcia and Representatives Arnton Wisk concerning an extension of the operation of the State Lottery Division beyond July 1st, 2024.
Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 66 in the Finance Committee report.
Do the finance report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee report made a small amendment putting the sunset at July 1st, 2049, and changed the word from repeal to amend. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion on the Finance Committee report, colleagues, the motion is the adoption of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Finance Committee report is adopted. To Senate Bill 66.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is a simple bill that I have to say that I'm proud to work with the good senator from Sterling on regarding the Colorado Lottery. As you might know, is headquartered in Pueblo, Colorado, and essentially asking for it to continue the great work that it's been doing.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of Senate Bill 66. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 66 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 165?
Senate Bill 165 by Senators Neville and Todd and Representatives Winter and Singh concerning requirements for public administrators.
Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I move Senate Bill 165 on seconds and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 165? There is now an amendment on the desk. Senator Jones. Thank you. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read Amendment 3?
Amendment L003.
Senator Jones. Well done, Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 3. Members, what this
Amendment 3, Senator Jones?
Pardon me?
You moved Senate Bill 3. Will you move Amendment 3, please?
Amendment 3. Thank you, sir. I move Amendment 003. So what this does is defines a public administrator as an oil and gas operator. This is increasing the bonding amount to $100,000 per person. And the interesting thing in Colorado, the bonding amount for a single well operator is $10,000. We have a huge backlog of orphan wells and abandoned wells that the taxpayers potentially are on the hook for $85,000 a piece, but people only have to put $10,000 down. I find it interesting that in probate court we find it important to have a bond for people who might misuse somebody's assets, but we do not have a bond for something that might, of the same amount, that might blow up, like it did in Firestone. So the state is putting a lot of money in, and we subsidized the Oil and Gas Commission last year with your taxpayers' money for this. And so what this amendment does is it says, look, if it's good enough for a probate court, it's good enough for oil and gas operators to have $100,000 minimum bonding. The Firestone explosion investigation took $750,000 from the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. That's the kind of thing that we should be protecting about. It's not just plugging and reclaiming wells, which we have a huge problem about. But the fact is, this industry is not paying its way in these cases. It could come back to you or your and my taxpayers. So I ask for a yes vote on this to make this in parity with the probate court.
Colleagues, we'll be in a senatorial 5. Colleagues, the chair rules that Amendment 3 does not fit under the title of Senate Bill 165. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, members, you don't have to have a tight title anymore. A big title like this is getting ruled that it doesn't fit under the title to define what a public administrator is. I find that bothersome and a change in how we operate, quite frankly. This is what is known as a fat title. My amendment fit under it. But I will respect the chair's ruling.
Colleagues, is there further discussion? Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to reiterate that Senate Bill 165 is an audit bill, that this basically came out in terms of identifying that these are specific issues to the public administrators. And so, again, I urge an aye vote to Senate Bill 165. Thank you.
Colleagues, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 165. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The two ayes have it. Senate Bill 165 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 136?
Senate Bill 136 by Senator Neville and Representatives Kraft, Tharp, and Size concerning fees for advising clients about the selection of an individual health benefit plan.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 136 and L002.
This is great. Senator Neville, will you just hit a quick overview on 136, and then if you just go into what L002 does.
Will do, Mr. Chair. So, colleagues, Senate Bill 136 is basically a bill that allows for, right now, currently, we have insurance brokers, medical insurance brokers, who are in a position where they're actually advising their clients on a wide variety of possible choices that they have. And traditionally, those brokers are compensated through commissions. However, in some cases, we've had changes with certain insurance carriers that are not providing those commissions anymore. So they're asking these brokers to basically work for free. Senate Bill 136 has provided for guidelines to allow for those brokers to do due diligence with their clients and customers and guide them through the process. If those clients are willing, they would get a commission if there's a commission offered by the insurance company, and if there's not a commission offered, they would have an opportunity to upfront, when they're working with their clients, to disclose that they will be charging a fee for those services if they move forward. And L002, Mr. Chair, basically provides a little bit of clarity, is that a word?
It is now.
Clarity. After today. Clarity. No, not clemency.
Sorry, clarity does not fit under the bill title, Senator Neville?
I don't think so. But basically, it provides some clarity that the rules prohibit an insurance producer from charging a fee to assist a client to enroll in Medicaid, because that's not what brokers do. And it also requests that they provide a written disclosure to the client. And then also there's another piece in here. There are actually two pieces regarding disclosure that clarifies some of the concerns that some of the stakeholders had. So,
colleagues, we're on discussion of Amendment L002 to 136. Is there any further discussion of Amendment 2? Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I rise in support of Amendment 2. This ensures that people who are eligible for Medicaid and CHIP will not be charged a fee.
Colleagues, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L002. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendment 2 is adopted. To the bill, is there any further discussion? Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I have a couple of caretakers for my daughter who get insurance through the individual market with assistance from the advanced premium tax credits. And even with the knowledge I have in healthcare and insurance, these brokers actually really helped us make a selection that was appropriate for them. There is a way of getting the help you need by phone for free from Connect for Health. It does take longer and it's harder to schedule. And so for people who have the funds and would like to get that extra assistance, I think it's very much worthwhile, and I think this provides enough protections in terms of notice and disclosure of fees, and I would support this bill.
Senator Koufalis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I, too, rise in support of Senate Bill 136. I received a very helpful communication from an insurance broker in Loveland, Colorado, indicating all the services they provide. And because of changing situations, sometimes they're not getting the commission from the insurance carriers. And this would give them the option of getting compensated for the services they provide. Thank you.
Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, too, rise in support of this bill and thank the sponsor for bringing this bill. I think it will help all of those who are out there working as part of these programs and bring some opportunities for those who otherwise might not get the right kind of pay. So thank you for bringing the bill, and I support it.
Senator Neville? Nope. Seeing no further discussion, colleagues, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 136. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 136 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 130?
Senate Bill 130 by Senator Smallwood and Representative McKean concerning the repeal requirement that health insurance carriers report average reimbursement rates for inpatient care to the Division of Insurance.
Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 130 on second reading.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 130 simply repeals a requirement that health insurance carriers report some reimbursements to the Division of Insurance. This was heard in Senate Health. As you probably know or may not know, we're trying as a state, in my opinion at least, to focus most of the reporting in a consumer-friendly way to the all-payer claims database. If you go to that website, if you go to Civic's website, you'll see some great strides that have been made related to transparency of pricing and trying to really educate consumers on where they can get the best outcomes at the most reasonable prices. So what we saw going on within the division is we have kind of this secondary channel which is, in my opinion, a little bit outdated, to where insurance carriers are reporting things to Division of Insurance. They post it on a website, which really isn't being used. We looked at website hits and found that over the last 2 years, only 44 unique human beings even access this website over 2 years. So we're asking the Division of Insurance to go through a lot of time and expense to report things that, A, consumers aren't even looking at, and B, it's in an area that we really don't feel consumers should be going through. I think it confuses the issues, and I'd ask for an aye vote.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I rise in support of this bill.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of Senate Bill 130. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 130 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 160?
Senate Bill 160 by Senator Lambert and Representative Hamner concerning the authority to operate certain teacher development programs and in connection therewith establishing alternative licensure programs and induction programs.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you. I move Senate Bill 160. Ask for an aye vote. This concerns induction and alternative licensure programs for our schools. Thank you.
Colleagues, the motion is the adoption of Senate Bill 160. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 160 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 151?
Senate Bill 151 by Senators Fields and Priola and Representatives Buckner and Wilson concerning Department of Education research to develop bullying policies.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 151 on second reading and ask for an aye vote. There is no committee report.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Senator Fields, there is a committee report. We had to amend the title. So I move the Education Committee report.
Great. To the committee report?
Members, noticed in the title that it some might think it would be to encourage bullying. We wanted to make sure that it was obvious that we were trying to discourage bullying, so we amended the title. Ask for an aye vote.
Colleagues, the motion is the adoption of the Education Committee report amending the title. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, senators. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this bill requires the Colorado Department of Education to research policies and approaches related to bullying prevention. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Senate Bill 151. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 151 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you read this title of Senate Bill 99, please?
Senate Bill 99 by Senators Merrifield and Priola and Representatives Pedersen and Wilson concerning the alignment of early childhood quality improvement programs with the Colorado Science Quality Rating and Improvement System.
Senator Merrifield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 99 and the committee report.
To the committee report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee report added to the bill that we would include licensed programs that have demonstrated hardship that are working towards achieving the Colorado Shine System Level 2 rating. This was brought to us by advocates of the bill, of the legislation, and would ask for your support.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of the Education Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Education Committee report is adopted. Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 99. This is a bill that came out of the Early Childhood Committee. It basically modernizes the language, cleans up a lot of the statute, a cleanup bill. Ask for an aye vote.
The motion is the adoption of Senate Bill 99. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 99 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 3?
Senate Bill 3 by Senator Scott and Representatives Hansen and Becker J concerning Colorado Energy Office.
Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 3 and the accompanying committee or Agriculture, Natural Resources Committee report.
To the Ag Committee report, please. Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Agriculture Committee met, discussed the Energy Office restructuring, and it was approved.
Senator Jones.
No, I did not.
I don't care what you do.
Are you
You're
doing
the sponsor.
Are you doing the committee report? That's what
Yeah,
we're on.
that's what, yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, so you're on the committee.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, he's doing it.
Senator Jones, we need to vote on the committee report before we go to amendments. Are you speaking to the committee report? All right, Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is to the committee report. I move 004. Members, what this does is it says, it adds.
Senator Jones, we actually have to adopt the committee report. You can still run Amendment 4, but we need to take a vote on the committee report. All right, is there any further discussion on the Agriculture Committee report? All right, seeing none, the motion is the adoption of the Agriculture Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee report is adopted. Senator Jones, just a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move 004. Members, what this does is it says, in promoting traditional energy sources, the office shall not promote activities that could negatively impact the health and safety of Coloradans. This goes to what's going on right now with oil and gas and decisions made by the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission prioritizing oil production over safety, in my opinion. And this office, the Energy Office, should not be put in a similar situation. They should, and we have this in all our bills, protect the public health, safety, and welfare of Coloradans. That's not happening now, in my opinion. I think it's witnessed by the 14 explosions last year since Firestone and the 4 deaths in total last year, and the huge response that people have had to this, and then the thoughts of putting these things near people. We wouldn't do this with dynamite. We do it with oil and gas. It seems is somehow right. So the Energy Office should not be supporting that in any way. They should have the best interest of our constituents, their public health, safety, and welfare as their primary issue, and that's all this amendment does. It also adds energy storage systems, since that seems to be what we're doing. We're adding things to the list.
Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would urge a no vote on L004.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge a yes vote. If you think that protecting Coloradans is your #1 priority and this Energy Office shouldn't be doing anything but, you will vote yes on this amendment.
Colleagues, just to, this is on me, so I apologize. Let's just clarify this. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read Amendment 4?
Amendment L004 to Senate Bill.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I asked that it not be read a length. I explained it. It just says we protect the public health and safety as a priority in the Colorado Energy Office when using traditional energy sources.
Colleagues, the motion is the adoption of Amendment 4. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. Amendment 4 is lost. Next up is Amendment 9. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read Amendment 9?
Amendment L009.
Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amendment 9 was brought to us after the bill had passed committee. We had a couple of small technical errors. On line 1, page 17, line 15, we added the word propane. We had forgot that in the original bill, so we needed to add that back in as it part of our energy portfolio. And then if you look down on the bottom of the amendment, line
Senator
20,
Scott, will you just move the amendment so we have that?
I'm sorry. I move L009. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you look down on the amendment, line 22 through 25, we mistakenly took out the single-family residential labor and materials and liability sector from a solar installer, which actually put the liability on a builder, and we didn't want to do that intentionally, so we're adding that back into the bill. With that, I urge an aye vote on L009.
Colleagues, the motion is the adoption of Amendment L009. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendment 9 is adopted. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read Amendment 8?
Amendment L008, Senate Bill 3 by Senator Kerr, amend the Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy Committee report dated January 18, 2018, page 1 after line 3, insert page
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L008.
To the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. A very simple amendment. What we are doing here is that we are making sure that the Energy Office moving forward continues their very good work with schools and school districts. The amendment just puts in Section 6, which talks about the duties and powers of the Colorado Energy Office, that we are including in their duties that the Energy Office shall work with all preschool, elementary, and secondary public and non-public schools. And then also where it says that they are to promote energy and cost-efficient preschool, elementary, and secondary public and non-public school buildings. This is to make sure that the Energy Office is working with our schools and our school districts to be as efficient as possible so that those scarce dollars that you may have noticed once in a while we come down here and debate about those dollars going to our schools, that those scarce dollars are going into the classroom for our students rather than going up in smoke in burning in a heater or an air conditioner. I ask for the adoption of L008.
Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge a no vote on Amendment L008.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I urge an aye vote on L008, and here is why. A little bit of this is personal for me. Down at the bottom of page 17, you'll see some of the crossed out duties of the office: implement and administer a Wind for Schools project, and work with Colorado Energy Research Institute to provide grants to advance energy efficient design and construction. These are some of the things that Senate Bill 3 is removing, and even though I was the sponsor of those bills back in the day, I agree with removing those at this time because the Wind for Schools project, very successful at the time, but it is the funding mechanism for it has moved, and it's no longer directly under the Energy Office. And as far as energy efficiency, quite frankly, no one has applied, no school or school district did apply for those grants or those loans. So with that, I'm okay with removing that language of what the Energy Office should be doing, because they, quite frankly, shouldn't be doing those things anymore. Years later now, those are being taken care of in other places. However, I do want to make sure that we keep this great connection that the Energy Office has with our schools and school districts. It was said to me that the Wind for Schools program never did anything. Actually, I have a list of some of the projects that the Energy Office worked with schools and school districts. And in fact, I found that Mesa County Valley Public School in Senate District 7 actually used the Wind for Schools project or grant money to install a wind turbine at their school that the kids could then learn about wind turbines as well as actually produce some energy, meaning that they were using less energy off the grid. Also in Senate District 16, Netherland High School and Gilpin County School both used the Wind for Schools project. In Senate District 15, Wellington Middle School. Senate District 35, Walsh High School. Sorry, it's hard to read there. And in Senate District 1, Flagler Public Schools, Burlington High School, Kit Carson, and it looks like Stratton Middle School. And I got a nice map here of all the different Wind for Schools projects in all these different districts. All I'm asking is to put a little bit of language here in the duties and powers of the Energy Office to make sure that they are working with our schools and school districts on a regular basis. I ask for an aye vote on L008.
The motion is the adoption of L008. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. Amendment 8 is lost. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read Amendment 5?
Amendment L005 to Senate Bill 3 by Senator Jones, amend the Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Energy Committee report dated January 18, 2018.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Amendment L005.
To the amendment, please.
Thank you. Members, Amendment L005 makes a change on page 17 to the Energy Office duties and powers and says that they may not approve schools or energy development within 1,000 feet of school boundaries. And the reason that this amendment is important is that there's actually been a 16% increase in asthma rates in Weld County between 2007 and 2013. And the presence of these chemicals in the air are harmful to children with asthma. And so this would try and decrease and mitigate the risk to children and hopefully not be a deterrent for children so that the bad air would not be a deterrent for children going outside and exercising and helping us prevent obesity in our community. And so I'd ask for your support for Amendment L005.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I too urge an aye vote on this Amendment L005. I think it's a reasonable request to make sure that we have this 1,000 feet pushback where our kids play and learn.
Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, members, I ask for a yes vote on this amendment. We require the Energy Office should be supporting the setback for public safety and health reasons. We require medical and recreational marijuana to be 1,000 feet from a school, not the school boundary, not just the school. That's all this does. And this isn't an academic thing. You have the public health thing that a previous speaker talked about with asthma and children with asthma, but there was a school in high school in Greeley recently that had to evacuate a football game because of off-gassing from a well that was near the field, several hundred feet from the field. I want you to think about that. This well was putting off chemicals that can cause cancer and make you very, very sick, and they had to evacuate a football game. But it gets worse than that.
Senator Jones, I'll ask you to try to keep it tight, and the reason is this is a COGCC issue, and we're talking about a bill in the Colorado Energy Office. So I understand the issue, but they're slightly different policy areas. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is why the Colorado Energy Office shouldn't be supporting anything within 1,000 feet of the boundary of a school, because a few years ago in Frederick, a well blew up and burned, and kids had to shelter in their middle school, I believe it was a middle school, for 3 hours. And there's stories about the kids being still bothered by being so close to oil and gas wells. But this thing was on fire, and they watched it outside their school. So it's the health, like in asthma, that we don't want the Energy Office dealing with. But it's also these explosions, 14 explosions in the last year. After Firestone, 4 deaths in all. 2 people in Firestone, 1 in Meade, 1, I believe, in Gailton. This has changed, people, and we shouldn't be having the Energy Office supporting anything that could hurt children within 1,000 feet of schools. So this is, to me, a no-brainer. I'd ask for a yes vote.
Senator Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask for a title ruling. I don't believe this fits under the title, as it has nothing to do, the bill has nothing to do with rulemaking. I would ask for a senatorial 5.
We'll be in a senatorial 5. The committee will come back to order. Is there any further discussion on Amendment 5? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment 5. All those in favor, division has been called. Colleagues, will you please take a seat?
Who are we missing? Lundberg, he's over there. Where's Randy? Randy there. I think we're good, aren't we?
Colleagues, the motion before the body is the adoption of Amendment 5, Senator Jones' Amendment 5. All those in favor of Amendment 5, please stand up.
Oh, come on.
Please be seated. Colleagues, all those opposed to Amendment 5, please stand. Amendment 5 is lost. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 3? Seeing none, colleagues, the motion before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 3. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 3 is adopted. Next up, Senate Bill 45. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title of Senate Bill 45?
Senate Bill 45 by Senator Lundberg and Representative Ransom concerning the repeal of the Architectural Paint Stewardship Act.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 45 and the Senate Appropriations Committee report.
To the committee report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee report is actually to decrease budget by $110,000 and a related FTE of decreased by 0.9 FTE. I ask for the adoption of the Senate committee report.
Colleagues, is there any further discussion on the Senate committee report? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the bill, Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, the Senate Bill 45 was my pre-file bill, the very first bill that I filed for this year. And after doing this for 15 years prior to that, this was my last pre-file bill. And I chose it rather carefully because, and it's simply a repeal of a program that was put in place a few years ago. And bluntly put, I consider the Paint Stewardship, Architectural Paint Stewardship Act to be one of the most embarrassing parts of the law for the state of Colorado, because it sets up a program that first was barely legal in meeting constitutional muster because it was designed for a single organization to receive millions of dollars from the people of Colorado, and on top of that, it's through a fee. To put it in simplest terms, a 75-cent per gallon of paint fee assessed against anybody who buys paint for architectural purposes, which means you're going to put it on a wall for a building, okay? Well, it's a 75-cent fee, and it is a nuisance fee in many ways, but when I went on Joint Budget Committee, I was waiting for this. I figured it was somewhere between a $6 and $10 million amount, knowing how much paint is actually sold in Colorado every year. And I couldn't find it in the budget. It's not there. Do you know why, Mr. Chair? Because the state of Colorado doesn't collect this tax. And I will call it a tax because it's assessed against anybody who buys a gallon of paint, but it's not really for the well-being of anybody who buys a gallon of paint. It's meant for the well-being of somebody who's trying to find a convenient way to get rid of their surplus paint, which, by the way, has been handled in a very efficient fashion prior to this by a lot of creative elements. Like in Larimer County, we had in our landfill a program where you could come and drop off your surplus paint, no questions, no cost. And if you wanted a gallon of paint, you could come and pick one up. Again, with no cost involved. But no, we've got to figure out a way to make an expense and a program out of this. So this system, here's the way it's actually assessed. The 75 cents is assessed against the retailer of paint, collected by the manufacturer of the paint, which is then turned over to this company called Paint Care, which was, curiously, created by the manufacturers of the paint. And I've also characterized this as corporate cronyism, because it's a system set up so that the paint manufacturers can get rid of what is called surplus paint and therefore take it out of the market and make it that much less available to the average consumer. And I know up in Larimer County, there was a used building construction company that used to, supplier, I should say, that used to have quite an availability of surplus paint. But when Paint Care moved into town, that all dried up. Anyway, let me just be very try to consolidate all this quickly, if I could. And that is to say that, well, the element that I contend that it's illegal. Colorado law states, Colorado constitutional law states, that no laws shall be established as a special legislation. And that means legislation to ensure that business A or citizen A specifically will be granted thus and such. Well, the way they got around it on this is they didn't name Paint Care, but this existed before this law was established, and it was written in such a way that there was only one organization in the world that could possibly fulfill the requirements, and that was Paint Care. So they've been collecting this $6 to $7 million a year, and they have, now I even thought that they were the ones recycling the paint, but they're not. They're just a distribution system. They turn it over to private entities that actually deal with the paint and had been prior to their existence, frankly. Also, be aware that only about 7 states, I believe it is, in the nation have this system in place. The others do not. And they're doing fine, thank you. But another concern I have is that I found out in my rolling this bill out that local governments, like Larimer County, which I represent, They get about $100,000. Kind of looks like a kickback to me. They get that money to handle this, whereas they had had a system that handled it all along prior to that. I find this to be a law that simply takes money from the people and pours it over to a special interest group that should be repealed. And that's exactly what Senate Bill 45 does, is it repeals this very offensive system that now everybody has to live under here in the state of Colorado. I ask for the adoption of Senate Bill 45.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I've done a lot of studying on this particular issue, and to give you a little background, we've been fighting the CDHPE over the county landfills for some time. But in looking at this particular bill, I think it's pretty much in line with what it was meant to be. All the data I have is from 2016. 2017 will not be released until March. But there was 13.3 million gallons of paint sold in 2016. Out of that, 672,029 gallons were processed or recovered in 2016. 81% of the paint that was sold was recycled for beneficial use. In 2016, there was the program collected $6.78 million, and they have a surplus of 1.36. And that, to me, lies the issue. I think what they can do right now, the price of the paint is 35 cents per pint or quart, 75 cents per gallon, or 32 cents per 5 gallon. And, you know, I think this is actually working, because the biggest issue that I have with this is 1 gallon of paint can actually pollute 255,000 gallons of water. And as a steward of the land, I have to tell you that I think we can do everything we can to stop that ground pollution, because this has been an issue. But I think that I think what I would like to see on this is to get it more in line with the cost of the recycling, and that seems to be the issue. And the industry also actually acknowledges this. So I think you'll see a drop in the 35 cents per pint or quart, 75 cents per gallon, or 32 cents per 5 gallon. But I think, and I understand there's only 7 states involved, but I think the time needs to be on this particular deal, especially where you have high water tables. And you will realize most of the bulk of the paint is sold in the metro area, where you have substantial high water. So I think that overall the program is working like it was anticipated, and I think I'm going to have to ask for this to continue, because I think that it's, you know, as a steward of the land, I think that we have the opportunity to keep this out of our groundwater, but the amount of paint that they recycle for beneficial use is 81%. And the reality is of what we're seeing is 5% of all paint sold has been recovered. So I think that it's not a bad program. So I think I'm going to have to be a no on this. Thank you.
Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I, too, want to echo some of the comments by the good senator from Alamosa, in that I feel, as a member of the Agriculture and Natural Resource Committee, that we have to be thinking about the long-term effects of those who could be discarding this paint down water, either stormwater, wastewater, however it's being the end-stream user, and the impact that would have. I think when we just look at this from one perspective, there's a lot of opportunity for us to harm others that aren't intended. And so I'd ask you to be a no vote on this.
Senator Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I was in the committee. We heard this bill. I do thank the good senator from Berthoud for bringing this bill. We're talking about $6 million in cost to not to recycle paint, but to basically pay people to potentially be in a position to get paint and give it to someone who actually recycles paint. It was very interesting. I just actually participated in a program with Habitat for Humanity, good organization. A lot of this paint that is recycled somehow ends up going to them and they actually sell it. Great, but there's only one problem. Why are the taxpayers paying for a program that benefits specific individuals? This is not constitutionally sound, this program. And the other issue that we have, let me ask you, how many products do you purchase where you get charged a tax even when you use the product as it's recommended to be used? This isn't an issue. If you buy paint in the state of Colorado, this increases your cost up to $1.60 for 5 gallons of paint. This is a tax. This is a tax which the people of the state of Colorado had nothing to do with passing. And it also, as the good senator from Berthoud has stated, it benefits the few. Many of the large stores that sell the paint, particularly in the metro area, do not participate with this program at all. All this does, colleagues, is put an added tax and an added burden on those people who buy paint, use the paint, and shouldn't be paying for this program, this expensive program that frankly pays for a few full-time employees or one full-time employee at the CDPHE, and frankly it's sort of a solution looking for a problem. So I urge an aye vote.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, colleagues. I just wanted to briefly rise and give perhaps a unique perspective on this bill and why I ask for a no vote on it. My family business when I was growing up was a garbage company. And one of the challenges that we always found when we were picking up particular residential waste was that there would be a full paint can in the middle of that sack of garbage. And then when we would, of course, compact all that garbage, what you would end with, and I'm sure you guys have witnessed this yourself, is that dripping of the paint along the road or at the sidewalk's edge. And where would that paint eventually reach? It reaches our waterways. And so this program is an innovative program. I'm proud that we're one of the states that participates in this because it directly addresses an issue that we were seeing in the community, that disposing of paint is not always an easy thing to do. And so having more ways to dispose of paint responsibly is a great avenue. Finally, let me just repeat a phrase that hopefully we all have learned. Reduce, reuse, recycle. And it's supposed to go in that order. Reduce, reuse, recycle. This program is unique in that it hits that middle portion, which is critical in our overall addressment of our waste diversion. It reuses paint, and that's why I feel it's an important program to keep in place. It puts Colorado in the innovative, it gives Colorado the innovative label that we deserve as being a leader on environmental issues. Thank you.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your kind attention to an issue that maybe the world isn't going to end over one way or the other, but it's a real good example of how government gets out of control and just has to run every aspect of our life and tax us for it as well. Something I didn't point out is, according to Paint Care's report that they give to the CDPHE every year, as of December 31st of 2016, they had accrued a $2 million surplus out of these fees that they had collected. $2 million. Now that was, what, 13 months ago. And you would think that the fee, if it's way over producing what's necessary, that they would then propose, well, let's lower the fee. No. No, their report said, this is how we're going to spend the money. We're going to increase the program. Even though they state the program is up and fully running as it is. Color me very skeptical that this is really intended to save the environment or make it easier on garbage collectors. By the way, it doesn't require a consumer to do anything differently with their paint, and I suspect that's still showing up in those trash bags. But what it does absolutely force and require is every citizen to pay 75 cents for every gallon container of paint they buy for a purpose that they probably won't be using. This is the sort of corporate, this is what people sent me down from my district, from District 15, to stand up against, and that's why I'm doing this. It's my last shot at doing it. I hope somebody will pick this up later and pay attention to not just this, but 1,000 other programs out there that do the very same thing. Mr. Chairman, when I go around and talk to my constituents and other people around the state, I don't find a lot of happy, contented, aren't they glad the government's getting into every aspect of our lives. No, what I find are people who are fed up with what's happening because every time there's a problem, we have to contrive some sort of a program to try to fix it, and never mind the fact that it'll actually make the cost of living higher and run everything else into a more bureaucratic world. That's what Senate 45 is all about, is just putting a little more sanity into our system and getting rid of one of the worst programs that is not functional. I sincerely hope that there's support for Senate Bill 45, but if we're not successful right here and right now, I hope that somebody else will pick this up and run with it, because it's one of those things that needs to be changed in the state's laws. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Colleagues, Senate Bill 45 has been moved. Division has been called. Will all those in the chamber please be seated? Colleagues, everyone in favor of Senate Bill 45, in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 45, please stand. Thank you. Please be seated. Colleagues, those in opposition to Senate Bill 45, please stand. The chair is not in doubt. Senate Bill 45 is lost. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the title to Senate Bill 26? Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to lay over the balance of the second reading calendar until Thursday, February 22nd.
Colleagues, the motion is to lay over Senate Bill 26, 156, and 62 until Thursday, February 22nd. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We will lay over the balance of the calendar. Colleagues, just to clarify, we laid over Senate Bill 43 until Thursday, February 22nd as well. Majority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee rise and report.
Colleagues, the motion is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. We will rise and report.
How many? Really? Senate will come back to order. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee has met, and we had a bunch of bills under consideration. Mr. Carpenter, will you please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee hold begs leave to report as had on consideration the following tax bills being the second reading thereof and makes the following recommendations thereon. Senate Bill 22 is amended. Senate Bill 7 is amended. Senate Bill 66 is amended. Senate Bill 165. Senate Bill 136 is amended. Senate Bill 130. Senate Bill 160. Senate Bill 151 is amended. Senate Bill 99 is amended. Senate Bill 3 is amended. Passed on second read order and engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1171 is amended. Passed on second read order, revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 125. Senate Bill 26. Senate Bill 156. Senate Bill 62. Senate Bill 43 laid over until 2/22/18, retaining their place on the calendar. Senate Bill 45 is amended. Lost on second reading.
Senator Hill.
Thanks, Mr. President. I move the report.
The motion before the body is the adoption of the report to the Committee of the Whole. There are amendments on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, would you please read Amendment 1 to the Committee of the Whole report on House Bill 1171?
Committee of the Whole Amendment 001, House Bill 1171. Senator Kerr moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to show the following Kerr floor amendment L004 to House Bill 1171 did pass. Strike the Appropriations Committee report dated February 14, 2018.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment 1.
Is there any discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment 1? Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 strikes the Appropriations Committee report. And we did talk about this quite a bit before the amendment was deemed to have lost during second reading debate. Just want to make sure that we know exactly what we're voting on here and what that means to your school district. My school district, if we do not pass this Cow amendment, my school district will not receive over $630,000 that they would otherwise receive if this amendment did pass. If you're wondering about any of your school districts, I'm happy to share those numbers with you. And a couple of the districts that were highlighted to me, Mapleton School District will lose $68,000. That's over $8 per student that they will not receive if this amendment does not pass. Westminster, $88,000. North Glen Thornton, $333,000. That's 1/3 of $1 million that North Glen Thornton School District, almost $8 per pupil, that they will not receive if this amendment does not pass. Pueblo City stands to lose over $140,000, over $8 per pupil. Centennial School District, small number, $2,764, but that is $12.72 per student that they stand to lose. I just want you to make sure that you know exactly what you are voting on right now. If this amendment does not pass, school districts in your Senate district will not receive money that they otherwise would under 1171. Please vote for cow number 1.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have had, thank you, Mr. President. We have had a thorough discussion on this. Please vote no on this Committee of the Whole report. A no vote will, in fact, maintain full per-pupil funding as established by the School Finance Act.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, vote yes on this Cal 001. The reason why is because we cannot be sacrificing our students. $7 million is a lot of money, and we cannot be putting our students at risk. Currently, we have a negative factor of $823 million. And the superintendents that I talk to all the time are talking about needing more resources. We cannot afford to sacrifice our kids. Vote yes on this count.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to House Bill 1171. Are there any no votes? Senator Lundberg, Majority Leader Holbert, Senator Scott, Senator Priola, Senator Smallwood, Senator Tate, Senator Lambert, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Crowder, Senator Neville, Senator Coram, Senator Hill, Senator Cook, Senator Marble, Senator Gardner. Senator Moreno, please add the president. With 14 ayes, 19 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to House Bill 1171 is lost. There is another amendment on the desk. Mr. Carpenter, please read Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 3.
Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 3. Senator Jones moved to amend the report of Committee of the Whole to show the following Jones floor amendment L004 to Senate Bill 3 did pass. Amend the Agriculture, Natural Resource, and Energy Committee report dated January 18, 2018, page 1, after line 3, insert page 17, line 6, after A, insert 1, page 17, line 8, strike 1, and substitute A, page 17, line 10, strike 2, and substitute B, page 17, line 12, strike 3, and substitute C, page 17, line 14, strike 4, and substitute D, page 17, line 16, strike 5, and substitute E, page 17, line 17, strike 6, and substitute F, page 17, line 19, strike 7, and substitute G, page 1 of the committee report, strike line 7, and substitute H, energy storage systems. 2, in promoting traditional energy sources, the office shall not promote activities that could negatively impact the health and safety
Senator
of Coloradans.
Jones. Thank you.
Thank you for the interruption that helps me stop the reader. Thank you. I move Senate Committee 0 Amendment to 003, Amendment 001. And members, this is the amendment that says if the office with traditional energy sources shall not promote activities that could negatively impact the health and safety of Coloradans. It's my feeling another Department of State Government is not doing that, the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, and we should not have this agency doing that. We see it all the time in our safety clauses, public health, safety, and welfare. That's what we should be talking about. That's what this amendment does, and I ask for an aye vote on the Committee of Whole Amendment 1.
Is there any further discussion on Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 3? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 3. Are there any no votes? Senator John, Senator Neville, Senator Cook, Senator Holbert, Senator Scott, Senator Priola, Senator Coram, Senator Crowder, Senator Baumgardner, Senator Sonnenberg, Senator Gardner, Senator Martinez-Humenick, Senator Smallwood, Senator Tate, Senator Lundberg, Senator Lambert, Senator Hill. Please add the president. With 15 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, we're on no votes on Committee of the Whole Amendment. Senator Marble is a no vote. With 14 ayes, 19 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 3 is lost. Motion before the body is the adoption of the report to the Committee of the Whole. Are there any no votes? With 33 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. Senate Bill 22 is amended. Senate Bill 7, Senate Bill 66 is amended. Senate Bill 165, Senate Bill 136 is amended. Senate Bill 130, Senate Bill 160, Senate Bill 151 is amended. Senate Bill 99 is amended. Senate Bill 3 is amended. Passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bill 1171 is amended. Passed on second reading, ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bill 125, Senate Bill 26, Senate Bill 156, Senate Bill 62, Senate Bill 43, laid over until 2/22/18 and retaining their place on the calendar. Senate Bill 45 is amended, lost on second reading. Announcements. Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make an announcement and also take a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, last night I had the opportunity to see a screening of a documentary. The name of the documentary is 3.5 minutes and 10 bullets. 3.5 minutes and 10 bullets. You can Google it and you can see trailers for this movie, but I would encourage you to see this movie. The movie in this documentary is about two cars. Two cars that are parked at a gas station, similar to what you would see here as a 7-Eleven. Two parked cars. One parked car has 4 African-American teenagers in it, and they're playing their music. The other car is driven by a middle-aged white man. He was 47 years old. He did not like the music that was being heard. He asked the drivers in that car to turn down their music. And that's when a gun showed up in this encounter. So this white male took out his gun and he shot down Javon Davis at the tender age of 17. Now his friends were on their way to the mall. They stopped at this gas station because they wanted to get a pack of gum because they were planning on meeting some girls. They never got the chance to go to the mall because Javon Davis at 17 lost his life. So out of those 10 bullets, he was sitting on the passenger side in the back. That car was struck with the 10 bullets. It's my understanding that 3 of those bullets struck him and he lost his life. This documentary shows what happens in the court proceedings as it relates to what happens to the person that shot and killed Javon Davis. He had a defense, and his defense was stand your ground. Even though Javon Davis, who was sitting in that back seat, did not have a gun, when he went to court, he said he was standing his ground because he thought his life was in jeopardy. It is a very powerful documentary. I had the opportunity to introduce to you the mother, Lucy Macbeth, who was here yesterday, and she's still here today. We had about 75, 80 people in Aurora watch this documentary. If you have a chance to see it, see it. The end of the story is, he was acquitted at first for the stand your ground, but they had another trial. And the next trial that they had, they did find him guilty of first-degree murder. And for the other young men that were in that vehicle, he got attempted murder for all of those 3 additional counts. So he is now serving a lifetime sentence in jail and probably will never be able to use that defense ever again. Stand your ground. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Carpenter, message from the House.
The House has passed on third reading, transmitted with riser statutes. House Bill 1091, 1183, 1134, 1210. The House has passed on third reading, transmitted with riser statutes. House Bill 1227, 1047, 1103, 1138, amendments printed in the House Journal, February 20th, 2018. The House is passing third reading, returns herewith. Senate Bill 542567. The House is passing third reading, transmitted to the Revised Statutes. Senate Bill 50, amendments printed in the House Journal, February 20, 2018. The House has voted to concur in the Senate amendments to House Bill 1065 and has repassed the bill so amended.
Message from the reviser.
We herewith transmit without comment House Bill 1091, 1134, 1183, and 1210 without comment as amended. House Bill 1047, 1103, and 1227 without comment as amended. Senate Bill 50 without comment, with comment as amended. House Bill 1138.
Signing bills.
The President has signed House Bill 1022, 1031.
Announcements. Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. After the tragic announcement from my colleague from Aurora, I have a less consequential but nonetheless necessary reminder that those on Health and Human Services, we're going to meet at 11:45, and there's a room change. We'll be meeting in room 357.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, just a quick update on education. We're going to try to meet up and get this done ASAP. We've got action only on Senate Bill 118, and Senate Bill 133 will be laid over, so we won't be doing that. So ask for your help right away. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Senator Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is the Colorado Technology Association's day at the Capitol, and they are down at the other end of the building on the second floor at noon to 2. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we will have bills to read over later today, so we're going to recess until 1:30. You do not need to be here, but of course you are welcome, as always, to join us. Mr. President, I move the Senate recess until 1:30 p.m. today.
Motion for the body is for the Senate to recess until 1:30 p.m. today. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand in recess till 1:30 p.m.